Marcia, I have to tell you, I am so looking forward to this conversation. When I first learned about your desire to be on the show, and your team sent me the PDF of your book, and I was in Paris and I had some time before my clients were arriving, and I sat in the Luxembourg Garden reading the PDF on my phone. I was so riveted to just the beginning chapters and also thought, how fun that I spend so much time in Paris that I think I can spend a whole afternoon just sitting in a park reading a book like
Oh
a
my
fabulous
gosh.
person. So I have so many good, happy feelings associated with our introduction that I know this is going to be a fabulous conversation. So thank you for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here, Wendy. I've been looking forward to it too. And I just love that you love my book.
Thank
And
you.
that's what people have been telling me. It's riveting. Sex, Power, and Transformation. Good title, right?
It's a great title, and it's so funny because I took it to the hair salon this week to keep reading it, and I when I walked in, I like the first thing I like put it with the cover down
Yeah.
because I was like gonna leave the station to go wash my hair and come back, and I didn't want anyone to be waiting for me at my chair to ask me all the questions. But yes, it is a great title, and obviously a page turner as
Yes.
well.
It's
So,
funny because I tell my girlfriends they should take a copy, a paperback with them wherever. And whether they're in a coffee shop or, like you said, a beauty salon, just put it on the table and it's going to start a conversation. It's not really a how-to about sex book, but it's a lot of sexual politics being a woman in a man's world. And it
yes.
is the story of my memoir, my story in the human potential movement as one of the key architects of the self-help industry. So I'm so glad you're enjoying it.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And I want to dive into any and everything that you have to say about this. But I would love to start by asking, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Oh my gosh. You know, I can't remember a time I didn't say yes to myself.
Love that about you.
I mean, even when things are down, I always know that the answer is yes. So
Love
I'm real.
that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's right, isn't it? Like every journey that we're on has its ups and downs, but I figure that the universe gives me my experiences for a purpose. And whether I interpret them being sad or bad or hard or difficult, that there is meaning in them and purpose. And I always say, welcome the experience to
Yes.
remind myself that whatever's happening, I should be with it and consider it best for me at this point and experience it fully in present time instead of telling myself this shouldn't be because it is. It's not that it can be, it shouldn't be, it already is. So might as well look at it, go through it, and enjoy it and say yes.
Yes, I love that. And it's true. And that's how I live my life. But I didn't ever put those two things together. So thank you for that. I love that, we know these things are happening for us, not to us.
That's
And we
very good.
also know that we're not going to miss out on what's meant for us. And there's so much relief in that and exhale in that.
Yes.
And it's a gorgeous reframe for whatever is happening. But where your story starts, you're young. And so, I'm interested in hearing how you're reconciling like what we know to be true and what we've learned to be true and what our spiritual grounding is and what we've remembered from what we knew before we got here, like all the things, then how that interacts with our lived experience. And
Very good.
as you revisited everything for your memoir, you're doing it as the woman you are now.
Yes.
So how what was that process like for you?
It was very cathartic and very interesting and moving. And I went through this writing of this book From the moment I started, it was a year-long process to the point I had it published just a month and a half ago, and it's been a bestseller on Amazon. It stayed as #1 for 2.5 weeks, and then we
Wow.
changed the subtitle, and they had to start over, and it was #1 again. So it's just,
Amazing.
I think it's because it's one of those books you feel when you're reading it, you're inside of it. You smell it, you taste it, you see it. It's like you're living it yourself. And then you reflect on your own experiences because it's my story, but my story is reflective of many stories. It's the story of a young woman growing into womanhood in a man's world. And it also, for those of you, your audience that doesn't know my background, I was one of the original founders of EST, which became Landmark Forum. It was called Earhart Seminars Training in the very early days. And we started with one seminar of 30 people. And I became the senior vice president. And I was at a very young age, my early 20s. So just really discovering the world myself. And in those 10 years, I was there working with Werner Erhard, who was the founder. We built it from that first 30-person seminar. By the time I left, there was almost 800,000 graduates. And
Wow.
now Landmark has a graduate base of 3.5 million around the world. So what we did in those beginning years created the foundation for an organization to become sustainable and expand. And being a part of that was very interesting because it was not only being a part of starting EST and creating a cultural phenomenon, because it became a cultural phenomenon in the early 70s. And we were in San Francisco. It was the time of the birth of human potential and self-help programs and people discovering their own inner power and their responsibility and how to be at cause in the matter instead of thinking you're a victim of your circumstance. So it was a powerful time. And then because of my work, I went on for many years being at the beginning of and part of the major part of building other organizations like Tony Robbins' company. I ran it for 2 years in the mid 80s and helped take him national and helped him launch his book, Unlimited Power. I co-created the Transformational Leadership Council with Jack Canfield. I work with Jerry Weintraub in Hollywood. And it was just, there are so many things I was able to participate in. So it's a story of sexual politics and manipulation, but transformation and miracles. It's miracles and madness all at the same time. And I think people really enjoy it. But it was one of those things where I look back now and I'm amazed at my younger self that she was so that her human spirit was so big and willing to be persistent and really saw that things were possible. I learned that particular mindset not only from Werner Erhard in the beginning days of my training, but before I met him, I was trained by my aunt, who was a clairvoyant spiritual teacher. And she taught me how to meditate profoundly, deeply. She taught me how to manifest. She taught me how energy works. She taught me about metaphysics. So I kind of lived my life backwards. I found
Right.
the secrets of how you handle life before life actually happened to me.
Right, which I
Yeah,
think is so fascinating. So
yeah,
how does that feel? Because for for me, and I think a lot of people, like you said, we do it the other way where we come to this awareness and then we're able to soothe ourselves through the experiences, mainly because we were doing the best we could with the tools we had. And,
yeah.
like we didn't know, but you had a knowing. And
Yes.
so did that, and perhaps you say this in the book and I just haven't gotten there yet, but did it, like, I feel like that would be really confusing.
I don't know that it was confusing. It's interesting because when you think about it, when I say I lived my life backwards, first of all, my childhood wasn't that great in terms of some of the things I experienced. So it wasn't like I had known no fear or I had known no pain. I had, but when you're a little girl, you just keep growing and you go on.
Right.
But I hadn't had the experiences in my life that happened later.
Right.
You know, I was divorced and that was hard. And I lost a stepchild to suicide, and that was just, you know, heartbreaking. And I made lots of money and was very successful and was very famous. And then one time I lost a lot of money and I built a company and it, you know, it didn't make it and had to be responsible for that. So all of those kinds of things happened to me, but they happened to me after I had learned about myself and after I had learned to connect myself to the higher power that we all have the access to, and some of us don't know how to access it. Um, and so what would happen is, even though it would feel the same way, you know, it hurt. I
Sure.
was devastated at times. How I handled it and moved through it was with a knowing that it was purposeful.
Yes.
There was some purpose in it. I wasn't resisting it. I wasn't feeling a victim of it. I was always looking to see, well, what was it that I needed to learn that I would create this kind of experience for myself in order to learn that lesson? And that particular perspective really gave me just a bigger sense of what's possible.
Sure.
And I think it made the journey a little more fun, even though it was at times terrifying and fearful and horrible, and I cried and all of those things. But it was done with this knowingness that it was okay and it's all going to work out. And also with a flow that I could move into it, that I could not resist it. And I know that when we resist things, we just make them bigger. You know, we just make them more solid. And so I was able to move through things quicker, faster, easier, like flowing in a river that's going in that direction. You're going in the direction of the river instead of trying to
Right.
swim upstream. So it is interesting for sure. Yeah.
Did you do you think that because you started kind of discovering or putting language and experience to these things with your aunt Gladys,
Yep.
um, that made it easier to hold on to and remember when you started having these situations like you had with Warner, and how, sometimes, so, and I guess what I'm asking is, sometimes when we have these enlightening experiences, the people that are associated with saying whatever we needed to hear for us to remember what we already know.
Yeah. Very good point.
And then something happens with that relationship with that person, it can sometimes cause us to discount all the good that came out of it. So do you think that because you had some of these practices with your aunt and that was like a safe continuing relationship, that you were able to separate, well, this situation is not in my highest good, even though this person is a
Mm.
teacher of this?
Yes, I understand what you're saying now.
Thank you.
I didn't look at it that way. And I think that's why the book is so compelling,
Yeah.
is because the book has both the light and the dark. It has both sides of the coin. It doesn't, I don't come out of this book looking that great sometimes. I mean, I share my own frailties and my own mistakes and my own things that I realized I wish I hadn't have done that or acted in that way, and to take responsibility for them. So I think that most people live their lives where they will only want to look at one piece of it. And
Right.
I actually think that's one of the problems in the whole personal development industry, and having charismatic gurus and transformational teachers and thought leaders that seem to have it all together.
Mhm.
And so we think that, oh, that person must know what's right for me because it looks like they have it all together. But boy, I've been right there with most of the major transformational thought leaders of our time. And I know they don't have it all together. And I know I didn't have it all together and still don't have it all together. It's a journey. When I lived in Aspen, Colorado, I learned that when you get to the top of the mountain, what you find is another mountain.
Mm.
And I think that people need to learn that about life, that, once you learn something, it's not that you now know it all. It's that
Right.
you're ready for the next thing you need to learn. And it may be just as uncomfortable or just as hard or just as difficult, but that there are that you get to learn from yourself how you respond. And,
Right.
and I also know that we all bring our patterns with us. And that's one of the threads of the book is the patterns that we take on and the decisions we make when we're very small children because of the environment we're in, because of what our parents have taught us, because of what we saw, and then we misinterpreted what it meant. And then we made decisions about how to compensate for that. And we have that through our lives as a motivator, or as it's almost like an embedded pattern that kind of runs your life, right? And I was able in the book to see my patterns, and I was thinking towards the end of the book was, here I am again wanting to please a powerful man, because that was one of my patterns. I wanted to be the best and look good for my daddy, and he was a hard man to please. And so I just realized how deep those patterns are. You think you know it and you've learned it. And so now you can go on and have that handled. And then it pops up again. And you just go, wow, here I am again, the same little girl wanting to please a big man. So I just think that life is one of those journeys that you need to learn the flow. And I think that you can't be in the flow until you realize who you are.
Mm.
Because to know who you are means you have to go within yourself. The
Right.
answers are within. And most of us as human beings try to find our answers outside. We
Right.
want agreement. We're so afraid or we're not confident enough of our own knowingness that we look to somebody else that must have the answer. And I think that something happens, especially in the world of transformation or personal development, when there are teachers that put themselves above, because power is very addictive and
Mm-hmm.
seductive, and you just don't know how you're going to handle it until you receive it. I remember the times, in the middle of when we were building Est, I was at dinners with very famous people and staying at the best hotels and at the best restaurants and having thousands of people idolize me and come up and want to have my autograph. And it's very, you have to know yourself not to have your head turned. And I
Mm.
think some of the teachers get to a place where they forget that what they were really about in the beginning was to create a space for another person that was safe enough that that person could discover their own answer.
Exactly.
And then they became a person that had the answer for everyone and everything. And you have to be careful because human beings want that. We want to have somebody else know better. And we look for that, and when we find it, we think, okay, then I have to listen to that. And then all of a sudden we give up our own voice and we go along with the answer, even though there's a little bit of ourselves saying, this isn't right, or I shouldn't, or I'm not sure. But because everybody else is doing it and it's the way everybody said, and the charismatic leader is saying this is the way it is, we forget who we are. So I just think you have to be careful. It's not that there's not both sides, the light and the dark, in every single person. We all have our shadow side.
Mhm.
And so when I'm working with powerful people and promoting them and building companies for them, I have to really remind myself to stay in my own power,
Right.
because it takes a lot of courage to say no when everybody around you is saying yes.
That's
Um,
right.
and I learned some of those lessons very deeply. So I'm appreciative of my own experience for sure.
Well, I am also appreciative of your experience, and I love that you decided to write the book, and I want to hear about that process. But what I love about it is that, like you said, you are telling your story, but you're not making yourself as the hero all the time either. Like you are
I
like,
wish.
right, but you're being
Yeah.
honest. And I think that, sometimes when, a book is written and it's like whistleblowing or, something like this. It's an expose into something that sometimes the person speaking either creates a persona that is without fault or that it makes sense, or we think that we can't say anything about our experience because we weren't blameless 100% of the time. So that somehow, because we weren't perfect, this bad behavior can't be exposed.
Yes. And I want people to know my book isn't a takedown. It's not a
Right.
tell-all. It's not. And many people have come to me and said that they felt I was so loving in the way that I shared what happened and I really honored people.
Mission accomplished.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But I think that we all have to be willing to be authentic.
Yes.
And in its authenticity, I realized I was doing things I didn't really think were the right thing. And then I realized how much we find a way to justify that
Right.
because it was very heady in that time of human potential because it was a cultural phenomenon.
Right.
We went from 30 people to 60 people in a seminar to 125 to 250, and then to 250 a month to 250 3 times a month, and then in one city to 6 cities to 10 cities to, and then all of a sudden hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of graduates. And that can be heady. And you have to understand that you need to know yourself. And at times, I feel we don't know ourselves.
Mhm.
We do make mistakes, and the mistakes are for us to learn.
Yeah.
So I don't make myself wrong. I don't make other people wrong. I don't think people are evil or anything like that. I just think we all have patterns. We all have our own shadow side. We all have our own mistakes, and how we handle them, I think, is pretty interesting. And it can be an interesting journey to find out about the path that someone else has walked and what they decided and how they decided it and then how they got out of it and how they, went and rose from the ashes after they were defeated. And that's
Right.
exactly what my book is. And I think it's the story of everyone. So
For sure. Well, and I just appreciate your vulnerability and your generosity in sharing the story. And you make mention, of course, on more than one occasion, how it is a story of sexual politics and a woman coming to power in a man's world. So say more about that and what you want people to know. I think conversations like this need to happen because
yeah,
the actions are happening. And
yes,
I think that when we speak about it, that there's a camaraderie and a permission to take some power back for
I
ourselves.
yeah, very well said, Wendy. Well, for me, it was interesting because one of my patterns is to please my father. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of women have that pattern.
Sure.
I think a lot of women have been raised in a world where the patriarchal aspect of it
Yeah.
is supposed to be right,
Mhm.
or the man is supposed to be the head of the family, or the man is supposed to know the answer, or the man is supposed to be the leader. And we haven't been, as women, educated in our own strength. I think other countries do a better job of it.
For sure.
I think Europe, I think South America, I think women in certain countries have been in touch with their own power and they realize that, they can get what they want
Mhm.
and they don't have to do what everybody else tells them. They have a voice. And there's problems in that aspect of it too. You have to learn how to be authentic instead of manipulative. So there's so much to this whole dynamic of men and women. But I think that women in our country, in the Western world, have been kind of taught that men should know and we
Mhm.
should follow.
Mhm.
And I think that some men are very, very smart to know how powerful women are. And Werner Erhard was a man that knew the power of women.
Okay.
And when I first worked with him, we were selling encyclopedias door to door.
Right.
That was the other part of our business besides filling seminars. And I learned so much from him. But the whole company was a team of women.
Right.
And he's not stupid to, he knew that women were powerful. And I
Hmm.
think when women ourselves find out that we're powerful, then we need to learn how to yield our power
Hmm.
because it's not good to yield it like a man yields it. We're not, there's a yin and a yang. There's a reason that we're a woman and we're the feminine side of things. But it
Yes.
doesn't mean that we're unpowerful. It just
Right.
means that we have a different gift, a different way of contributing our power. But I think that we've been taught that daddy knows the answer. The
Hmm.
man knows. And you're supposed to be quiet and not talk and not share and fortunately for me, I know it's just awful, right? I
Such an
grew
eye roll.
I grew up in a world where because I had this gift
Hmm.
of sales and
Hmm.
enrollment, I was like a Pied Piper. People were attracted. And if you came into my guest seminar, you enrolled in this training, and we built a company, and I could get a team to get behind me and to follow me and to be inspired by me. It was a gift. And I think that
Right. And you learned these scripts, like
yeah, yes,
the unbelievable precision
mm,
of like
yeah,
when to step in your, just to let the listener know, in the encyclopedia sales was door to door, and you
yeah,
were also speaking to women, but you had this methodology of this is how you say hello. Like you had to practice saying hello for hours and hours and hours until you said it in the right energy. But just this choreography that you were
yeah,
dedicated to
yes,
learn, but also gifted at having it be effective for you.
absolutely. And I think that people in Landmark, which is now the largest personal development company in the world, and there are miracles there in the classrooms, in the seminars, in the trainings, there are miracles. At the same time, it's become a little bit of a cult in the organization in that people don't listen except if you have the same perspective as they do,
Right.
which is very interesting to me because when we started EST, the precursor to um, Landmark, the whole purpose was to create a space where people could discover who they were and get in touch with that part of themselves that was powerful so they could take that back into their world and make their world, their relationships, their family, their communities more powerful and work better. And I think that some of what has happened, and not just in Landmark, but in many of the big charismatic guru led kinds of organizations, we get so we get to the point where we need that community in order to be okay.
Right.
When we were supposed to come in, learn the stuff, and then go back to our communities to make it better,
Mhm.
now it's become, well, I hope you take Landmark because I can't really talk to you unless you have taken Landmark. And the miracles of Landmark are amazing. But when you and other also personal development courses, there are so many people out there doing good things and sharing great wisdom. But if it becomes a crutch
Yeah.
that you have to have your whole world come in and participate in order to even be able to think you can speak to them, there's
Right.
something out about that.
Right. It's Amway.
Yeah. So anyway, I have my own perspective on that. But I mean, but like I said, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Sure. Well,
There's
and I love this just your explanation of this because I agree, and I'm doing personal development and spiritual development work as well, but why it's resonating is because I am trusting that I am the one that knows. what's best for me, and I'm learning how to access that and act on that and invite other people into that knowing for themselves. But
Yes.
none of it is associated with one person, or, that's a person. And growing up in the church, it feels a lot like that. And that was a part of my movement away from how I spent Sunday mornings, was just, oh, that's a person's opinion about what they're reading, not actually God
Yeah.
speaking. And because I was a little girl when I started it, it was just
Yeah.
the thought system I created around everybody that worked at the church. And my dad was also a pastor. So that
Oh,
was,
wow. Yeah.
layering on top of it. And I believe that they were all well-meaning,
Yes.
and no one was mad that I was super compliant and
Yes.
submitting to the
Yeah.
godly leadership of my husband and all of those things, until I didn't, until I had my own opinion and it was different. Then there was
Yeah.
a
Caused a ripple.
breaking. Well,
Yes.
right, like, because I was breaking social
Yes.
contracts, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm no longer going to church, but I'm also no longer married. And so
Yes.
it is this movement, but it's not just replacing what I had at church or what I had in marriage with another teacher. It's
Yes. It's a
remembering,
journey. It's a
yes.
journey of self-discovery. And also, I feel like the difference between dogma and your experience and your wisdom. So I think that churches, it depends on how they're led, because there's a lot of dogma, or it can be very spiritual. It can be very awakening. It can be very freeing. And I am one to give honor to
Yeah.
the masters and to the wisdom that comes down through many thousands of years. I just learned, though, that there is a place where if it turns into dogma and it turns into you give up your whole voice and blindly accept something. And in the beginning of Est, Werner always said to us, and I'll always remember this, he said, and he would say to the graduates, here's some information. Here's a way to look at things. Here's some possibility for you to discover some things about yourself. Try it on, like you would go into your closet and try on an outfit. Try on this information, try on this wisdom, try on this particular perspective. See if it works for you. If it works for you and your life gets better and your relationships get better, then keep it and use it. And if it doesn't, throw it out. But then along the way, somehow that got lost, at
Mm.
least at the very top of the organization, where it had to be a particular way. And it had to be their way or the way and the answer. And that's what I think everybody needs to watch out for, not just in an organization, but in a family, in a team, in a business,
Mhm.
in the way that you choose to run your life. It's like, take the methodology, take the wisdom, take the courses, read the books, have some kind of a guru that is a mentor to you, get a coach, all of those things. But then take that information into yourself and try it on. And then consider if it works or not, and have the breakthroughs from that, not from just because they said so, it must be right. And you don't know as much as they do, because you know everything for yourself. You just have to be quiet enough and courageous enough to go inside to be able to hear the wisdom that will be given to you if you're willing to go to that place. So, it's a journey for sure. It's a crazy journey. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right. But it's also easier and more empowering than just handing over all
Yeah.
your agency. Like,
Yes.
it's kind of, once you know better, you can do better, right? Like all of these things. But you're right, like the work works, but it's also work. Like you're just
Yes.
constantly
But I think also there
interacting.
is a there is a purpose for being a servant. In all disciplines, there's a time where you serve. where you have a master, where you have a mentor, where you have, and there's a purpose for that because when you're learning something new, you really don't know.
Right.
And so, but you can't, for me, it takes on a different light when all of a sudden you have this awakening and you discover this and you go, oh, yes, because in the beginning you are using that kind of distinction of, is this for me?
Right.
Does this ring true? Does this feel right? Because it's new and you're learning.
Sure.
But if you get to the place where you've had so many breakthroughs and so many amazing things that have happened as a result of that wisdom that you've taken on and kind of utilized and you got from someone or something,
Right.
that then you don't look anymore. You just consider they must know.
Right.
That gets dangerous. And we all as human beings, we want to, it's easier to ask somebody else what works for me.
Mhm.
I hope you have the answer because it's too hard for me to find my own answer. Do you see?
Right.
So we
Yeah.
all kind of look outside of ourselves when we should be finding the place within. And finding the place within isn't that easy. It's
Right.
also a skill set because, and everything that you learn, you have to start as a beginner,
Yeah.
which is very interesting though, because beginners don't know the answer.
Mhm.
They're clumsy and wrong, and they don't look good. They're not looking that good.
Awkward.
It's
Right.
awkward, yeah. And every human being is thrown to being right, looking good, and knowing the answer. So it's not easy to be a beginner. You have to be willing to be a beginner. You have to be willing to allow yourself to look like a mess and make mistakes. As you learn and practice, just like when you're riding a bicycle, the first time you don't do that well. And it doesn't matter how
Right.
many books you've read about how to ride a bicycle, it ain't going to work until you've actually done it and practiced it and tried to embody it
Yes.
and get to be an expert. When you get to be an expert, there's another journey. And that's the part where I think it falls apart is people start thinking, I know it all now. I have all the answers. And I have not only all the answers, I have the answer that is right. And we have to just be careful and watch ourselves, is my
For
advice.
sure. Yes, I couldn't agree more. So, what is happening now that the book is written? Like what is happening now for you?
Okay. Well, it was a very great experience for me because writing this book, I felt like, wow, I didn't realize how much I had to let go of.
Yeah.
It was very cathartic. It was my childhood. It was transformation. It was the cultural phenomenon of starting a new industry. It was being a woman. It was going through life. It was, getting married, getting divorced, it was all of those things.
Right.
And then I got to a place where I was very still after the book was written. And the book is magical to me. Like
Yeah.
I had to read it so many times because we had to edit it and I had to approve
Sure.
it and everything. But I was always amazed every time I read it. I was so compelled by it. I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting.
I love that.
It grabs you no matter how many times you've read it, because it's not just my story, it is everyone's story depending on, what you go through, but can be everyone's story to reflect.
Right.
And it has that magic. And so now I think what I want to do is I've been working with corporations for many years. I go into corporations and I do a 3-day leadership training
Okay.
with the key executives. So I take anywhere from 20 to 50 key executives of an organization and I teach them all the things I've been taught.
Okay.
Only I've put it into a vernacular of championship performance and leadership and communication mastery. So it's skills that people want to learn, but at the same time, it's the wisdom
Mhm.
that I have lived my whole life and been a part of due to the experience I've had. And so I kind of call it now, it's like the ABCs of being an effective human being,
Okay.
or the ABCs of leadership, or the ABCs of peak performance. And what I've discovered is that when you learn to read, you learn the ABCs.
Right.
Now think about that. The ABCs, you didn't know what they meant in the beginning. It was
Right.
just a letter and a sound, and you didn't even know why you were learning it.
Right.
And then after that, you learned it could make a word, and then a sentence, and then a paragraph. And pretty soon you're reading Hemingway.
Right.
And when you read Hemingway, you don't think about it. you're in a world and you can interpret this world and able to maneuver this world with great expertise. But
Mm,
why? Because you know the ABCs.
right.
It's the foundational principles and the basics that make that whole world available to you. And I've put together a program, and I'm wanting to put it in a digital form and do it for an online audience as well, maybe in weekly segments. I haven't really decided yet, but it's what I've been doing in corporations that really works, where if you learn these key principles and concepts about how it all works, how your mind works, how your emotions work, how your body works, what are the laws of the universe, how does communication work, what causes inspiration, what causes motivation, how does perspective have anything to do with it? So there's some basics, okay? And I've been able to, over the last 10 years, put it together in such a way that it's a moving experience. And you
Mm,
don't even know what's happening until the end, really. You're
sure.
learning all of these different things, but all of a sudden at the end, it all fits together. And suddenly it's like reading Hemingway. And then you suddenly realize, oh my God, my leadership has changed. My ability to listen has changed. My ability to communicate and connect has changed. So that's what my next work is.
Ugh, that's amazing. What you said about that process and asking those questions, are they, I mean, I just love that question. Like, what makes, how does inspiration happen? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, I only know when it has. I don't know, I'm assuming everything I did before is what made
Yeah.
it happen, but to identify and segment out, is that what you're teaching people to do in that process?
Yeah.
So then they can recreate the environment where their teams are so that they can be
Yeah.
inspired. That's
I
amazing.
had a GM of a major hotel call me, and I had worked with him before when he was at a different hotel. And he called me up and he says, March, I need you. And he had to put together his hotel in 90 days
Oh,
from not having any staff and any systems and any equipment or anything, right?
wow.
And it was taking on a new brand. So it was kind of from zero to opening in 90 days, like 8 restaurants in the hotel.
Oh
And,
my
the
gosh.
whole, I know, just it was an
Yeah,
impossible task. And so he said, everybody hates each other because of course they do. You've got a couple hundred people that are trying to do this impossible thing, and they're all going to be blaming each other and
right.
fighting with each other and competing and all sorts of things and not liking each other. And, he said, only you can do what you do. He said, I've realized I haven't found anybody else that does what you do. He said, come in and make this a team. I
Mm,
went in and did the 3 day, and it literally in 3 days, people are working together and they're committed to each other and they're clear on how they connect and it's a whole thing. It's magical,
that
just
is
like all the
magical.
things that I learned and that you learn about in my book. You learn how it happened. It's magical. And so that's what I want to do for the next, I don't know, it's kind of Marcia Martin point
Right.
8.0.
You'll know when. You'll know when it's time for something
Yeah.
new. Oh, I love that, Marcia. It's so good. And you're such a gift to keep
Thank you.
sharing what you've experienced and what you are evolving to and continuing to know, and how that is fine-tuning your
Yeah.
practices and how you are. And I love that you're implementing it into so many industries, and how this can really have beautiful ripple effects in the
I'm
world.
also thinking of working with women. I think that that's a special thing that I might take on now, is doing some to empower women and have them really discover what a woman is and how, because I think women talk to men as if the guy is a woman, but just with a lot of hair. And I think a man talks to a woman as if she's a man, just more emotional.
Hmm.
We speak to the opposite sex as if it's the same species. And
Right.
I really think men and women are totally different species, and they
Mhm.
need to know how to communicate with each other, and they need to know what their own power is and what their own gift is. And when you know that and you can align it with the other half of you, it
Right.
makes a whole piece. But women are trying to be women or trying to be men. I'm going to act like a man, and then everybody will know I'm powerful. And like, well, I don't know. It's not works as well as if you just use your womanhood power.
Right.
So
So,
that's a possibility as well.
yeah, well, if you did decide to do that and you were doing it now, what would you want me to know?
Oh, what I would want you to know is that the woman is the attractor.
Hmm.
So women call, men respond. Women are the appetite. In other words, you choose what you want. That's your job. And men are the producers. They're really good producers and they want to produce for you. They want to give you what you want, except it all breaks down because a woman doesn't know what she wants, because mostly she doesn't think she deserves it. And so she starts asking a man what he wants to try to please him. And then a man, that's not his job. Do you see? He doesn't want you to tell him what he wants, really. I mean, but then he thinks he has to. And so he starts making up things that he wants. It's like totally screwed up then. And I think that women have thought of their attraction as being something about their body and their looks.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's attraction is not about if you have your makeup right or your hair, or you're the right weight. And women have gone to the place where they think that's it. If I get myself really attractive, but attraction is a different thing. It's your ability to call forth. It's
Hmm.
your ability to create. And women shy away from that. They don't understand that and how to deal with that. It's very profound, I think. So that's one of the things that I would share.
I love that. Thank you. That's such a yummy takeaway. I appreciate that.
Good.
Thank you. Well, I have loved this conversation, Marcia.
Well,
It's
I love this too.
brilliant and amazing. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, how they can get their hands on the book, and if
Yeah.
there's anything else you want to add in closing that you want people to know, we're here for it.
Awesome. Well, you can find me by going to my website, marciamartin.com, and it's MarciaMartin.com. And you can find a tab there to get my book. You can find a tab there to get my coaching. You can find a tab there to get my corporate training. And my book is available on Amazon. The name of the book is Sex, Power, and Transformation by Marcia Martin. And I would love everybody to get this book because it's a good book. It is a great book. And I think what I would love to leave people with is there's a real simple mantra that I have and I give to other people that just if you stop to think about it, and that is center first before you act.
Hmm.
Center first, then act. And what I mean by center is you need to get yourself centered. And centeredness is when you're present, you're open, and you're open and you're connected. So present is you need to be here now. And most people aren't here now. They're thinking about the past or worried about the future, or
Hmm.
they're trying to think of what to say while you're talking to them, and they're not even present with you in the conversation. And openness means that you could consider something possible, even if it is in disagreement with how you feel.
Hmm.
That there could be, it could be okay for that person to have that particular opinion. And you don't have to tell them that they're wrong, but it's not that you're agreeing with them, but you could consider it's possible. You could be open to it. You could allow it to exist. You don't have to stop it. You don't have to resist it. You don't have to tell them they're bad or wrong. You don't have to justify your position. You can just be with them and consider it's possible, whatever they're sharing, even though you don't agree with it. And connected is really coming from the place where you really know you're part of it all.
Hmm.
The ocean is a huge body, but when it crashes on the waves crash on the rocks. There's a spray that goes up, And it's an individual droplets come out of the ocean as individual expressions of the bigger whole of the body of water. But it doesn't mean it's not a part and not connected. It's just an individual expression. And I like to say we're like that in terms of the divine connection, that we're all part of the same DNA. We're all part of the same consciousness. We're all part of the same magnificence, and we're all part of the love. But we have our individual personalities. You know, I'm an individual expression of the whole called Marcia. And if I can operate like that and know I'm part of everything, then I don't consider I'm separate. Something changes about the way I relate to people. So if you can be centered first, and it's something sometimes you need to breathe and get yourself back in your body and back in present time and back actually seeing the person in front of you
Right.
before you act. Because if you act before you're centered, you're reacting, you're not responding. And the power of a human being is to be able to respond effectively to the environment. But you can't choose a response if you're not here, if you're not centered. You're just a reaction doing it automatically. So that's my mantra for people. And my last words is center first before you do anything. Don't speak until you're centered. Don't push the button until you're centered. Don't answer the phone. It's center first, then act.
Thank you. That is so generous. And we will put all the links down in the show notes to make it easy for people. But thank you so much, Marcia. I have loved this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. And God bless you.
Thank you. You too.